In this video, I'll show you how I dry hopped my Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. A few things I used are scissors, marbles, paint strainer bag, hops, and dental floss. You will also need the kegs to put the beer in, as well as a CO2 tank. Since I'm using paint strainer bags, I cut off the top nylon elastic part. I just took my scissors, cut it off, and called it a day. You'll also need a pot of water that has boiling water in it. I started that a few minutes ago, so it was boiling by the time I did this. What I did is I took these bags and the marbles and threw them in that pot for about 10 minutes. 10 minutes might be too long, but why not do it just to be sure? I threw the paint strainer bags just because they had a weird feel to it. I washed them off and then I threw them in there. As you can see, I have about 10.5 gallons of beer right here. I actually have a gallon of Trube on the bottom, which ended up being a little bit less. I don't know why, but it compacted down a little bit more. So it ended up being like maybe 9.5 gallons. To fill the kegs, you just take the lock off the top, get the tube, make sure everything's sanitized, which I'm doing right there. Dump out the sanitizer that's left over in there. You get that tube, you connect it to the spigot. With the sanitizer, everything's slippery and hard to move, and don't want to spill anything and whatnot, so you actually got to wiggle it around to get it on there. Once it is, make sure everything is connected and then open up the spigot. I actually had it disconnect on me once. That's why when I turned it, I held on to the tube. It took about 5 minutes for the first 5 gallons. So I had to sit there, make sure nothing else is getting in there. When you're done with the first keg, just move the tube over to the next keg and let it run till the end. Like I said, that Trube ended up staying at the bottom. I think it was because I had the beer so cold. It was actually nice having the Trube not get sucked down with the beer. To dry hop, you just throw the marbles in the paint strainer bag. I threw a few more in because I figured I don't want them to get stuck in the middle. I'm using a 1/2 ounce of Cascade per keg to get a nice hoppy citrusy aroma. Once they're thrown in there, tie off the top, get some unscented floss, tie that to the top of the knot, and then just put the lid back on. It's a pretty straightforward process. What's nice about the floss is that it's sanitary because you have to use it in your mouth. You don't want any, they wouldn't sell it with bugs on it, hopefully. And it doesn't let any air out of the keg or air into the keg and CO2 out of the keg because it's thin enough that the rubber gasket on top of the airlock goes around it. I found out that the wax dental floss kind of just sticks to itself on the keg. So I just looped it over and made it tight before I put the airlock on. Same process with the second keg. Just take the marbles, put them in the paint strainer bag, throw the hops in there. Make sure you use enough floss. The first one I didn't use enough. Second one I took about 4 feet instead of 2 feet out of the floss. Tight around the top. Make sure the knot is nice and tight. You don't want that going to the bottom and getting stuck in the tube. Tied off to the handle. Again, you don't want it getting dropped to the bottom, getting stuck in a tube when you're pouring the beer out for your friends or family. Lids on. You want to purge the kegs with CO2 since oxygen is the natural enemy of beer. Oxidation does not taste good, so we want to get as much air out of there as possible. So you just hook the CO2 to the end, which is typically on the left side. Make sure you have your CO2 set to 10 psi. Some people do 5, some people do 30. I do 10, it works for me. You let it hiss out all that air. One thing I liked about this fermenter is that it was easy to clean. All my 10 gallons were fermented in one place. I didn't have to worry about contamination, and the spigot, just pour it in the kegs. Thanks for watching.